It began with confidence. Maps spread across candlelit tables, ink stains on officers' fingers, boots scraping wooden floors. Men hunched over charts of Maryland farmland, convinced they understood what lay ahead in Richmond and Washington. Strategists spoke in calm tones, as if numbers and arrows on maps could predict the chaos to come. Generals believed the outcome could be shaped. Politicians believed the war could turn with one bold stroke, and ordinary soldiers believed their cause, whichever flag they followed, would carry them through. But nothing on those maps captured the truth. No diagram showed the rising fog, the smell of cut corn, the confusion of smoke, the screams, the hesitation of exhausted officers trying to read shifting orders, while cannon blasts shook the ground beneath them. No calculation accounted for and as two great armies converged, one belief lingered on both sides. This would be decisive. They were right, just not in the way they expected. Because by the end of the day, more than 22,000 men would be dead, wounded, or missing, and war itself, as a human institution, would cross another threshold. The year was 1862. The Civil War had already torn families apart, devastated towns, and filled graveyards. But in a strange way, both sides were still learning. They had uniforms. They had flags. They had bands that played stirring music on the march. But what they did not fully understand was that they were living through the first major war of the industrial age on American soil. Rifled muskets could kill at distances 3 times greater than the smoothbores of earlier wars. Artillery shells shattered bodies from hundreds of yards away. Railroads moved entire armies faster than humans had ever moved soldiers before. The telegraph transmitted orders at nearly the speed of thought, and yet, the tactics remained decades behind. Officers still believed in massed formations. They still believed men shoulder to shoulder represented discipline and courage. They still imagined swift, glorious charges breaking enemy lines in dramatic fashion. They believed history still worked the way it had under Napoleon. But the battlefield had changed. The world simply had not caught up to it yet. Confederate General Robert E. Lee was admired even among his enemies for his composure, confidence, and tactical brilliance. He understood his situation. The South was outnumbered, outmanufactured, outsupplied. But Lee believed war was as much psychological as physical. He knew victory on Southern soil would never be enough. He needed to shake Northern morale. He needed to make the North bleed deeply enough to question whether the war was worth continuing. So he crossed the Potomac, into Maryland, into Union territory. It was a daring move, and a dangerous one. His army was divided, pushing in multiple directions to capture towns, supplies, rail lines, and communication routes. But Lee believed time was his ally. He believed the Union commander, George McClellan, would be cautious, as always. He had reason to believe that. McClellan was brilliant at organizing armies, training soldiers, and inspiring confidence. But he carried one flaw that haunted him. He always imagined the enemy stronger than it was, and Lee counted on that fear. He intended to maneuver, threaten, pressure, and force the North toward negotiation. That was the plan. Until fate intervened, near Frederick, Maryland. On a quiet stretch of farmland, Union soldiers rested. One soldier found something unusual, wrapped around 3 cigars. A document, carefully unfolded. Stared at in disbelief. It was Lee's detailed battle plan, troop positions, movements, division routes, everything. It was as if a curtain had been pulled back. When this remarkable discovery reached McClellan, he reportedly exclaimed, "Here is a paper with which, if I cannot whip Bobby Lee, I will be willing to go home." But paper is not victory, and information unused is only ink. Rather than striking instantly, McClellan hesitated. He wanted more troops, more confirmation, more security. He believed caution prevented disaster. Ironically, caution ensured one, because while he prepared, Lee gathered his scattered army. The Confederates were still outnumbered, but now, instead of being crushed in detail, they would meet the Union head-on. The stage was set for the bloodiest day America had ever seen. September 17, 1862, The air was still. A thin fog drifted over fields. Dew clung to leaves. Men whispered prayers, wrote hurried letters, adjusted belts, tightened boots. Across the lines, both armies waited. You could almost feel the breath being held. Just beyond the Union positions stood a simple cornfield owned by a farmer named David Miller. By the time the sun reached its peak, that field would become legend. The cornfield, Union artillery opened. The blast rolled like thunder. "Confederate!" guns answered. Within minutes, smoke covered the ground, blurring vision, distorting sense, turning the world into chaos. Union infantry marched into the corn. The stalks towered over them, green walls hiding what lay ahead. On the other side waited Confederate infantry, crouched, steady, disciplined. They unleashed volleys. The first line staggered, another advanced. Regiments collided without ever fully seeing one another. Men fired toward flashes, toward voices, toward shadows. The cornfield became a killing ground. Commandos fell. Standard bearers collapsed, lifting flags again before dying. Horses screamed and fell still. Soon bodies lay everywhere, hidden beneath trampled stalks and dark soil. It is said that when the fighting finally stopped, you could walk across the field without touching the ground. Only corpses, and yet, despite everything, victory belonged to neither side. Only death did. As morning chaos drifted south, fighting concentrated along a rural farm lane. A path worn deep by years of wagons and livestock. To the Confederate defenders, it was a gift from nature. Walls of earth on both sides created cover. They lined it with muskets and determination. The Union Army prepared to attack. They assumed incorrectly that their numbers alone would break the defenders. They advanced in formation, again and again, volley for volley. Wave after wave, Confederate fire tore through the ranks. Flags fell, columns shattered. For a while, it seemed the lane could not be taken, but unseen factors, coordination, ammunition, shortages, mounting fatigue, began to erode the defense. Then Union artillery found its range. Shells exploded inside the trench-like depression. The perfect defensive line became a perfect trap. Bodies piled. Officers tried to rally men. Some fled. Some died in place. When the Union finally surged over the position, they looked down into the lane, stunned. From that moment forward, the name changed. The sunken road became Bloody Lane. Ward had again revealed its brutal arithmetic. A good defensive position is powerful, until firepower makes it lethal for those inside it. While carnage unfolded north of the battlefield, Union General Ambrose Burnside stared at a stone arch bridge crossing Antietam Creek. Its surface was narrow, its approaches exposed. Confederates controlled the heights above it, perfect lines of sight. Burnside believed this bridge was the only viable route to advance. He did not reconnoiter adequately. He did not trust reports suggesting the creek was fordable elsewhere. He committed again and again, brigade after brigade, column after column, into concentrated, elevated Confederate fire. The bridge became a bottleneck, a funnel of death. Only after terrible losses did Union forces finally seize it and cross. By then, time had been lost. Momentum faded, and Lee had summoned reinforcements, including the legendary troops of A.P. Hill, who arrived just in time to counter what might have become decisive turned into stalemate once more. Not because Union soldiers lacked bravery, but because an assumption had gone unchallenged. One bridge, they believed, was the only path. Belief cost lives. Beneath every tactical decision at Antietam lays something invisible. Technology outpacing doctrine. Rifled muskets allowed infantry to mow down attackers long before they approached bayonet range. Artillery shells, fragmented, unpredictably cutting down men who thought they were safely prone. The telegraph allowed rapid communication, but also created pressure to act quickly on partial information. Railroads allowed armies to move and resupply at unprecedented rates, turning battles into prolonged meat grinders instead of short engagements. And factories produced uniforms and bullets so consistently that armies could keep fighting. Long after earlier societies would have run dry, human courage remained the same. Human error remained the same, but now both existed inside a machine that magnified consequences. Antietam was not medieval warfare. It was not Napoleonic. It was a preview. What happens when mass production meets military planning, and commanders still think heroism alone decides wars? As the sun dropped, the guns began to quiet. Fires flickered. Chaplains walked the fields. Medics worked under lantern light, overwhelmed, numb, exhausted. Wounded men cried for water. Some cried for mothers. Some called out names of friends already gone. The battlefield, so loud hours earlier, now sounded eerily still. The cost: more than 22,000 casualties in a single day. No side felt victorious. Lee had failed to crush Northern morale. McClellan had failed to destroy Lee's army when he had the chance. The armies withdrew. The wounded remained. The fields of Maryland became an open-air hospital and cemetery. Though tactically inconclusive, Antietam gave Abraham Lincoln what he needed: momentum. The Union could claim the invasion had been repelled, and so Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation draft soon after. This transformed the war's purpose, no longer only about preserving a Union, now tied to ending slavery in rebelling territories. Foreign nations considering recognition of the Confederacy stepped back. Diplomatically, Antietam mattered as much as militarily. A bloody field changed global politics. When historians call Antietam the bloodiest day in American history, they do not say it lightly. It symbolizes more than totals on casualty lists. It stands at a threshold, the dawn of modern warfare concepts. Attrition rather than decisive battles. Industrial capacity replacing individual heroism as the deciding factor. Doctrine failing faster than leaders could revise it. And most haunting of all, the way military systems consume human lives when belief and reality diverge. McClellan overestimated enemy's strength. Lee overestimated his army's ability to withstand pressure on northern soil. Burnside misjudged a bridge. Countless junior officers trusted formations that had silently become obsolete. Each decision fed into something unstoppable. The machine rolled forward, and the cost was measured in blood. Behind every number was a story: a farm boy from Pennsylvania, a clerk from Georgia, a teacher from Ohio, a cobbler from North Carolina. Some marched barefoot, some carried lucky charms. Some had never traveled more than 20 miles from home before the war. Letters found in pockets spoke of weddings, harvests, newborn children they had never met. Doctors fought with time, tools, infection, doing what they could. Families waited weeks for news. Some never learned where their loved ones lay. On that battlefield, the myth of war as noble shattered, replaced by something colder and truer. War is not cinematic. It is wasteful, relentless calculation, powered by human decisions that cannot be undone. Antietam remains etched into history as the bloodiest single day in organized modern combat, but its lesson is universal. Overconfidence kills. Rigid doctrine kills. Misreading technology kills. And worst of all, those who pay the price are rarely the ones making the decisions. The soldiers of Antietam did what they were commanded. They marched, they held, they charged, they died. Their sacrifice forces every generation afterward to ask, what happens when leaders take outdated assumptions into a world that has already changed? And will we recognize the cost before it's too late next time? As the wind moves across Antietam's quiet fields today, you can still imagine the echoes. Drums, orders, rifle volleys, cannon thunder. Then silence. History does not forget days like this. Nor should humanity. Because understanding days like Antietam isn't about glorifying war. It is about remembering how fragile human life is, and how quickly miscalculation can turn fields of corn into fields of graves.